Day 4 of the singles category of the Phoenix Festival Tournament covers the 8 matches in Bracket D. Links in the description down below so you guys can go there, vote for who you think would win in each match, and give your reasoning as to why. Whether it's due to experience, weapon, semblance advantage, etc. However detailed you want it to be, a reason does have to be given. Now, our first match of the day is Ruby Rose versus Sienna Khan in the Ice and Geyser biomes. Now, these biomes don't necessarily give an advantage to either combatant, but they would give an interesting terrain for these two to fight across, as when they are in battle they would have a pretty interesting dynamic. Sienna Khan, with her semblance of grudge, her power increases the more that those around her have their aura reduced or broken. So, in a 1v1 match, Sienna would have to constantly be keeping close to Ruby and dealing damage against her, reducing her aura for her own power to be increased. Now, Sienna's weapon, Cerberus Whip, isn't really the heavy damage dealing type of weapon. A whip is more for glancing blows, reducing people's aura gradually, so Sienna's power increases, and then she can deal the finishing blow with Cerberus Whip. So Ruby, having her Petal Burst, would be able to dart around the battlefield, avoid a lot of Sienna's attacks, but trying to deal her own attacks would be kind of difficult in and of itself. Sienna is quite quick on her feet as well, so if Ruby tried to snipe Sienna from a distance, Sienna would likely either be able to dodge or block with her Cerberus Whip. So Ruby would probably have to get close combat with Crescent Rose, and getting close to Sienna with her Cerberus Whip, if Ruby is taking any damage by that point, Sienna's own power would be increasing, making it just that much more difficult for Ruby. This would be a close match back and forth, but I think Sienna is just more experienced than Ruby overall. Sure, Ruby has had the training in Volume 7 from the Ace Ops, but Sienna was the leader of the White Fang for some time, as well as just a member of the White Fang fighting against the SDC, against other slavers, and other things that she has fought in her life. So she's had more combat experience overall, and I think Sienna would take out Ruby in this fight, though it wouldn't be an easy fight overall. Our second fight of the day is Nora Valkyrie versus Dudley in the Forest and Geyser biome. Now, Dudley is the Tweedledum out of Tweedledee and Tweedledum, but he is still a fully trained huntsman. He did graduate, even just barely, and fighting with his rifle that he could also use as a blunt instrument, he wouldn't be an easy opponent to deal with, but if he got close to Nora at all, she would power herself up with the electricity that's stored in her hammer and be able to slam him enough to break his aura. I think Nora would win against Dudley almost every single time, just because Dudley doesn't really seem the most experienced or talented huntsman that's out there, and Nora has had the training from the Aesops and is now a fully fledged huntress in her own right. So I think Nora would take this one, though again wouldn't necessarily be an easy fight, though it would be a pretty much guaranteed fight, I think. Now, our third match, on the other hand, is Carmen Esclados and Clover Ebby in the Forest and Savannah biomes. This one, I think, is a lot more of a close fight, with both of these characters being graduated and experienced huntsmen, and huntress in Carmen's case. Now, Carmen has the semblance of telekinesis, and it's not as strong as Glinda Goodwitch's, so she's used to manipulating small objects, such as the weapons that she's used to fighting with, which is her sai, and also anything that she can find in the environment. We've seen her in After the Fall and Before the Dawn manipulate the sand in the desert to create, little sandstorms here and there, and those types of things. But with the forest and savanna biomes, not really much that she can manipulate, except maybe a couple tree branches here and there or some blades of grass, which could be good distractions and things to use against Clover, but not really much that she could use to her advantage overall. And Clover, he fights with his weapon of Kingfisher and his semblance of good fortune. With a couple lucky hits against Carmen, he might even be able to restrain her with his Kingfisher and wrap the fishing line around her, but Carmen, with her semblance of telekinesis, could either move the fishing line itself and free herself from that, or even just manipulate her sai to either cut the line, if that's possible. I have a feeling the line itself is metal, so she might not be able to do that with her sais, but manipulate it in a way where she probably wouldn't be ensnared by it. So this would be a fairly close fight. I think Clover would have just the overall experience advantage and just be a better fighter than Carmen in general, but it would be close, I think. Both of them are very experienced. Carmen is one of the main fighters in The Crown that was featured in Before the Dawn, so a fight between Clover and Carmen would be fun to see. And I'm curious to know what you guys think in the voting as to who would end up winning, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results this weekend. Our fourth match is Oscar Pine versus versus Penny Polendina in the Urban and Geyser biomes. Now, Oscar has improved quite a bit over the time that we've seen him in the RWBY series, progressing from simple farm boy to someone who can hold his own in a fight, and briefly fought against Hazel, but did fight against Leonardo Lionheart and was dealing some decent blows against him. Though if Leo was actually confident in battle, that may have gone a bit differently, but Oscar's definitely improved. I don't think he's improved to the point where he could take on Penny, because Penny has air superiority, the multiple blades that she has that can also fire lasers, not to mention the Kamehameha blast that she has. So if that landed on Oscar, his aura would probably be broken, reduced quite quickly, and I think Penny, unfortunately, would take out the little cinnamon roll without too much effort. But Oscar's definitely a decent fighter, and I really look forward to seeing what he can do in Volume 8, especially with Ozpin's return. Maybe he'll get some new abilities. Hopefully his semblance, which could help him out greatly in the next Phoenix Festival tournament, but for now, Penny, I'm pretty sure, is just going to take him out. Moving on to our fifth match, though, we get one of the best girl, actually, in the RWBY series, as we found out a few months back, Neapolitan versus Bolin Hori, a member of Team Auburn, and they are fighting in the mountain and lava biomes. Now, Bolin, he was a pretty skilled fighter in Team Auburn. I really like Team Auburn, and they seem quite skilled in general, especially Arsalan, their leader, but Bolin fought with a staff that had 2 blades at each end. So pretty much a close combat style weapon, and if you get close combat against Neo, she's going to use your momentum against you, flip you around, and you're going to end up on your back a lot faster than you would even realize what was happening, and then Hush is probably going to beat you half to death. So I think Neo is going to take this match very quickly. She is an extremely skilled fighter, able to take on the entirety of Team Alpine and wipe the floor with them, so she's definitely a contender to watch out for in this tournament, and Bolin, unfortunately, would not have a chance to fight against her, at least for very long. Moving on to our sixth match, though, this one's probably going to be another quick one, sadly. We have Hazel Rainart versus Melanie Malachite in the Savannah and Geyser biomes. Now, Melanie is one of the Malachite twins that was introduced in the yellow trailer. She's the one who fights with the heels, and those being a very close combat weapon. Now, she is definitely a faster fighter than Hazel by quite a bit, I would argue, but having to get that close combat to Hazel, the amount of speed that you have wouldn't matter that much, as Hazel is a massive tank and powerhouse of a character. When he injects dust into his arms and powers himself up, he can release the elemental blasts and just slam the ground to create shockwaves. Again, nowhere near as powerful as Yatsuhashi's slams into the ground with his fulcrum, but Hazel is still strong enough to knock Melanie backwards and would probably be able to take her out fairly quickly. Melanie just got a bad matchup on this one. For our seventh fight, we actually get Melanie's employer, Junior Zhang versus Dove Bronzewing in the Anti-Gravity and Savannah biomes. Now, Junior Zhang, he is a pretty strong fighter in his own right. We didn't really see that much of him. He was introduced in the yellow trailer. We saw him briefly in Volume 1. He fights with a club that is also a bazooka. So, pretty strong weapons in and of themselves, though more for one hit that deals a lot of damage rather than quick successive blows. Dove Bronzewing is a member of Team Cardinal, and he fights with a sword that also has a gun in its hilt. And he was stated in the Volume 2 commentary, I believe it was Volume 2 commentary when Pyrrha was fighting against all of Team Cardinal, that Dove is the most skilled member of Team Cardinal. Now, Team Cardinal, although they were a bit of a joke in the RWBY series in Volumes 1 and 2, they still made it to Beacon Academy on their own merit. They are, qualified to be there. They are skilled huntsmen in training. So Dove against Junior, who Junior we don't think has any training as a huntsman. He's still a strong character. I think Dove could actually take Junior in this fight. If he's able to avoid Junior's shots, he would be able to deal some blows against him. Dove is a quicker fighter than Junior, so he'd be able to dodge a little bit easier. I think Dove would actually win this one. Maybe using the anti-gravity biome to his advantage and things like that. It would be a fairly even fight, I think, having play out with Junior being the heavy hitter and Dove being the more speed fighter, but this would be one I'll leave it up to you guys to decide in the voting, but I think Dove, in my opinion, would take this overall. Next, we get to our final fight of the day. That is Fiona time versus Yatsuhashi Daichi in the mountain and urban biomes. Now, Fiona time, we haven't actually seen her in combat. We know what weapon she fights with, the pretty much standard weapon of the Happy Huntresses, that is a staff that has blades on the ends as well as a crossbow, so jack-of-all-trades style of weapon, and Fiona's semblance is the palm pocket, where she can store matter in her aura. Now, she could get creative with this and store a bunch of matter and things in her aura before the fight began. That would already start draining her aura before fighting, which maybe not the best idea, but if she was able to launch it outwards, depending on what velocity she could launch things outwards, that could surprise her opponents, and she could deal some decent damage against Yatsuhashi, but Yatsuhashi, as we saw at the end of Volume 2 with Fulcrum, a single one-handed swing and he shatters the ground around him, launching everyone backwards. And from a simple jump from the ground and slamming his sword downwards, he has the capabilities to destroy an entire biome. Unfortunately, Fiona's semblance is more geared towards, the Robin Hood style of fighting. That is thievery and not really direct confrontation, whereas Yatsuhashi is a powerhouse in and of himself. Plus his semblance of memory wiping, he could easily disorient Fiona, and Yatsuhashi's going to take this one as well. So hopefully you guys are enjoying these fights. These are the 8 ones that we had for today. I'm looking forward to seeing how round 1 plays out, what matches end up for round 2. Hopefully you guys are as well. And if you want to keep up with the Phoenix Festival Tournament, make sure to subscribe, keep up with all the different RWBY content that'll be coming out alongside it. Tweet me at PhoenixKnight7, join our Discord server, also linked down in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.